Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Hellmode, Volume 3, by Hamuo, translated by Taishi, narrated by Diontae Black. Chapter 1. The Academy Entrance Exam. Several months had passed since the House Granvelle affair, and it was now March. At the moment, Alan was helping the gardener with his work. Although he had become a guest of House Granvelle as of last November and was no longer obligated to work, Alan still wanted to do so until he had to leave for the academy. Ah, it's here. Alan stood up, dusted his hands off, and walked to the main gate as a single carriage pulled through. When it stopped, a pink-haired girl leaped out. Alan! Welcome. It was, of course, Krena. She had made the journey to Lord Granvelle's mansion from Krena Village. The moment she laid eyes on Alan, her face lit up like a light bulb. Following right behind her was the boy with a face that looked even more like a bumpkin's than before, Dogora. Been a while, Alan. Sure has, Dogora. Dogora had always been bigger than Alan, but now he was a whole head taller. 3 days from now, these two would be taking the entrance exam at Academy City. Viscount Granvelle had invited them to stay in his mansion until their departure. To be exact, he had invited Sword Lord Krena. Dogora was sort of a tag-along. Both now stood in front of a 3-story mansion, the size of nothing they had ever seen before, with clothes and weapons well worn with use on their backs and their jaws on the ground. So Palomas really didn't come with them, just as he said. Palomas, the son of Krena Village's chief Deboji, possessed the merchant talent, which was not in line with the raison d'etre of the academy established by the Five-Continent Alliance. Instead of the academy, he would be attending a commercial school run by the Merchants Guild located in the kingdom's capital. 2 months earlier, Alan had asked for leave to go home. There was a lot he had to tell his family, such as the facts that he had quit his job as manservant, had become a guest of House Granvelle, and would be heading to Academy City in April, and that both Rodan's and Gerda's families would be exempt from the head tax going forward. It had been 4 years since he left home, and he wanted to pay his parents a visit before setting off for the academy. After first passing the official letter from the Viscount confirming the two families' exemption from paying tax to the village chief, Alan had headed straight home. Rodan had asked, "What did you do?" in surprise when Alan brought out his ornamented silver dagger. However, he withheld comment regarding Alan quitting the manservant job. Teresia, though worried, only replied, "Just take care of yourself, okay?" Perhaps as a mother, she felt her son was rushing through life a little too quickly. Alan then dropped off 100 gold, explaining that he would be unable to send money home for a while. Both Rodan's and Teresia's faces turned white at what seemed, to them, like an astronomical amount. After a brief pause, Rodan cried, "How on earth can we accept all this money?" Alan told them that he still had more than 600 gold in a bid to reassure them. Only then did Rodan fold and accept the bag of coins, but not before muttering, "Seriously, what did you do?" with a face that looked worn out from being surprised. Mash badgered Alan for stories, so Alan recounted his adventures fighting goblin villages, orc villages, and armored ant nests. Mash hung on every word, his eyes sparkling. Naturally, Alan made no mention of the murder gouge. He was not interested in traumatizing his younger brother. Alan shook himself and brought his attention back to the present moment as Krena announced herself in an energetic voice and stepped inside the mansion with Dogora. The first thing that they saw was the Viscount and his family standing in wait in the entrance hall to greet the visiting sword lord. "We welcome you to our home," Viscount Granvelle said warmly. Back when the Viscount, a baron at the time, visited Krena Village to observe a great boar hunt in person, he did not have the opportunity to meet Krena before returning to Granvelle City. Consequently, this was the first time the two were meeting. The Viscount offered a hand for a handshake. Krena accepted it, acting as if they were equals. Well, as a sword lord, chances are that she might eventually become at least a marchioness. Viscount Granvelle's smile remained on his face, indicating that he did not take any offense at Krena's attitude. Alan had already warned him of her personality beforehand. A sword lord was considered a valuable asset to the kingdom at large. Sword Lord de Verg, who was said to still be active on the battlefield, had been born a serf, but now held the title of Marquis. That was 2 ranks higher than Viscount. In a way, peerage was one of the go-to rewards that the royal family handed out, having been left destitute after decades of unending war. In this world, only nobility were duty-bound to fight the Demon Lord army. As Viscount Granvelle had explained, Krena would be made Baron the moment she graduated from the academy.
"So, you're Krena," Cecil said, stepping forward. "Nice to meet you."
Krena started as if something had come to mind. "Are you Lady Cecil? I'm so happy to meet you." She grabbed the other girl's hands and shook them energetically. The silence that followed prompted Krena to tilt her head in confusion. "What's the matter, Lady Cecil?" Although Alan had told both Cecil and Krena to get along with each other beforehand, the way Krena approached with no hesitation whatsoever, despite this being their first meeting on top of their difference in social class, had left Cecil at a loss for how to react. Just as Alan mentally willed her back into action, she finally gathered herself enough to stammer that it was nothing. She then shot Alan an accusatory glance to gloss over her bewilderment. "Okay," Krena replied. "Huh? Did Cecil just glare at me? Nah, I must have imagined it." Over the 4 years they had spent together, Cecil's prickly attitude toward Alan had softened considerably. However, when he had resigned from his job as manservant, she had berated him up and down.
"How dare you quit being my personal servant without telling me?"
were her exact words. It was only recently that her anger seemed to have subsided somewhat. There was a specific reason why Krena had been invited to the mansion. 3 years from now, Alan would be going to fight the Demon Lord army with Cecil. However, as a summoner and a wizardess, they both had very low endurance. Alan had the stone-type cards, but over-reliance on them would take up slots and limit the tactics he could employ in battle. Consequently, Alan had come up with the idea to invite Krena, whose Sword Lord was the ultimate class for physical combat, to join them. Since she was going to have to head to the battlefield either way, they might as well all go together. To that end, today was partly meant to be the first get-together between the 2 girls. However, there was no guarantee that they were all going to be stationed together after graduation. The Viscount had therefore visited the royal capital out of concern for his daughter to inquire how assignments were decided. What he learned was that Giamut, the nation that represented the central continent, and the rest of the 5-continent alliance had almost exclusive say in such matters. Not even the King of Ratash could answer Viscount Granvelle's question. Officially, soldiers such as Sword Lord de Verg may have been under the Ratash King's direct employ, but there were many things that the king was not privy to. This meant that, when it came to their lives at the academy and their eventual fight with the Demon Lord, Alan and his friends would have to do a lot of figuring out for themselves how things would turn out. So for now, the plan was to have Krena hang around them at the academy. She would be a very reliable addition to their party for when they would go crawling the numerous dungeons supposedly within Academy City. "I'll be working to help Krena and Cecil level their way up through the dungeons. It'd be really helpful if I had a way to check their statuses in my grimoire." Recently, Alan had gone to sleep every night clutching his grimoire and fervently praying to the gods. A sword lord had been born as his neighbor, and he had ended up serving a noble family with a daughter his own age who was a wizardess. There was no way these were mere coincidences. Therefore, if Alan was fated to vanquish the Demon Lord army together with them, then being able to keep an eye on their statuses was an absolute necessity. Whether or not to include Dogora in their party was still up in the air. The fact that Mahai, also a 1-star class, had lost his life caused Alan to worry that the battlefield might be too dangerous for Dogora. In the end, he wanted to leave Dogora the freedom to make his own choice. Although the magic tutor had stressed that Demon Lord history was highly confidential, Alan planned on eventually sharing it with Krena and Dogora in secret. They might not know how their military service would play out, but they could at least spend their 3 years in the academy working toward the same goal, mindful of what was to come afterward. Dinner was served soon after Krena and Dogora's arrival. This scene here is making Dogora look respectable by comparison. Beside Dogora, who was stiff with nerves and doing his best to eat as politely as possible, Krena was attacking her food with a vengeance, giving the impression that it had been a long while since she last had a full belly. She had a steak impaled on a fork in one hand and a large piece of bread in the other, and was taking bites from both in turn. Thomas simply stared at the sight, his hand stopped, and his mouth hanging open. "Oh, aren't you going to eat, Alan?" Krena asked between bites. "I'll eat after this." With a practiced hand, Alan deftly cleared the empty plates from the table. Both Krena and Dogora watched him with incredulity in their eyes, as, for some reason, Cecil seemed to emanate pride. When the meal was winding down, Viscount Granvelle turned to Alan and said in a formal tone, "Alan, take good care of them all." "Of course, I will do my utmost," Alan replied, bowing deeply, as if expressing his regret at ending the life he had lived these past 4 years. "Now then, I have to make sure that I find that at Academy City. I bet it exists. For now, let's go gather information at the Adventurers Guild. Maybe I'll learn something that could prove crucial to my fight against the Demon Lord army in 3 years." Alan had a task to fulfill in Academy City, even more important than attending school. 3 days later, Alan, Krena, Cecil, and Dogora set off for Academy City as planned.
"Alan, it's Academy City!"
Krena exclaimed, dazzled as she leaped off the bottom step of a staircase descending from the magic ship. Cecil and Dogora followed right behind her. The group of 4 children had just landed on an expansive landing pad in Academy City. The city was massive. Its official name was Academy City of the Kingdom of Ratash, and it boasted a population in the hundreds of thousands, making it multiple times the size of Granvelle City. If they all passed their entrance exam, this was where they would be spending the next 3 years of their lives. Children their age, clearly exam takers as well, milled all around. More than 20,000 examinees would gather here each year, so the city had special transportation set up and increased the number of direct flights from each realm. A voice overhead repeatedly blared, "Examinees, please head to the station with a green roof to board the Academy-bound magic train." "They have trains here, too?" When Alan and his friends arrived at the green roofed station, they were greeted by station attendants informing them that the trip on the magic train cost 1 silver. They paid up and headed for the home platform.
"It really is a train!" Alan cried.
The others mouthed the term train without really understanding until it finally came into view. Then they all exclaimed,
"Whoa!"
in unison.
"A bona fide train! Was this made in Bacchus as well?"
The Empire of Bacchus, a nation run by dwarves located to the northwest of the central continent, provided both the required technology and partial funding for this educational institution. This city boasted such excellent infrastructure that it was said to be a more comfortable place to live than even the royal capital.
"We walk into this thing?"
Cecil asked apprehensively. "So it seems," Alan replied casually, stepping through the doors that had opened with a hiss. His nonchalance prompted Cecil to blurt out,
"Why do you seem so fine with it?"
All around them, serfs and commoners hailing from every corner of the country stood frozen in place as they stared at the magic train in a daze. "I had no idea they had trains like this. Come to think of it, Mahai never really told us all that much about Academy City itself. It was the magic tutor, not Mahai, who told us that the headmaster was a high elf. There are surprises everywhere here." Maybe he was trying to keep it from sounding too exciting so Cecil wouldn't get her expectations up. Before long, the train started moving. A look through the windows at the passing scenery revealed that, as Alan had expected, this city was quite technologically developed. 5-story buildings lined major avenues like they were perfectly ordinary, painting a townscape practically alien compared to Granvelle City, the capital of a mere countryside fiefdom. Krena was plastered against the window, her head twisting back and forth as she repeatedly exclaimed, "So cool!" She was enjoying herself so much that it was making Cecil draw back a little and wonder if this was how a sword lord really behaved. For a split second, the sight made Alan worry about Krena's performance on the exam, but by the next moment, he thought better of it. She's leveled up and all. All those points in intelligence mean she ought to do fine. He had heard that Krena and Dogora both started participating in the village's great boar hunts when they turned 10 years old. All the level-ups boosted their intelligence, and with 2 whole years of studying, Alan expected them to pass the Academy's entrance exam without issue. Apparently, the exam is pure academics, with no practical elements involving swinging swords or anything. Meanwhile, I only had 4 months to study. What's more, all my studying was just sitting with Cecil while she reviewed everything she'd already learned prior. Oh, come on, man. Alan did nurse a slight amount of dissatisfaction with the Viscount for waiting until the end of the previous year to bring up the matter of him attending the Academy. The Viscount had probably done so out of a desire to respect Alan's self-determination, but Alan wished he could have been told earlier. After all, he probably would have agreed even if the Viscount had made the request when he was 8. Over the past 4 months, not a single reason to refuse had occurred to him. In all likelihood, the Viscount had been wrestling with the question of what he could personally do for Cecil's sake this whole time. Eventually, the magic train came to a stop at a station near the center of Academy City. As passengers staggered out, still in a daze, Alan and his friends struck off for the Academy. The kingdom of Ratash had a population of around 20 million. Serfs and commoners might not end up conscripted, but Academy graduates would have no trouble at all finding employment anywhere within the country. With this in mind, a massive number of children came to knock on the doors of this institution each year. When Alan passed through the tall wall that surrounded the school grounds, he found the open courtyard already filled to bursting with other examinees. An announcement played repeatedly over a loudspeaker-like magic tool set up in various places around the venue. All examinees must first undergo the appraisal ceremony. Those who pass are to bring their assigned number tag to the reception counters in front of a school building. Appraisal ceremony? Krena parroted, tilting her head in bewilderment. That's what they're saying, Alan shrugged. Looks like everyone's doing it. Sure enough, there were several lines in the square, each leading to a set of equipment that Alan recognized from when he was 5. I see. So they appraise everyone to prevent any talentless from getting in. This reminds me of a story Captain Zenoff told me about the noble who claimed to be a sword lord despite only being a swordsman. The man had failed to perform when his strength was needed most. Thinking about it now, that was probably on the battlefield and in the middle of a fight with the Demon Lord army. I can only imagine the amount of trouble that ensued when the forces with him realized that they didn't have the fighting strength they thought they did. The line made significant progress over the next hour. When it was Alan's group's turn, the examiner asked, "Is anyone here from a noble family?" Cecil spoke up. "I'm from House Granvelle." The staff member nodded and wrote something down. They check for nobles here? Then the appraising for the group began. "Please come forward one by one and place your hands on this crystal," the man said. Dogora went first. Name: Dogora. HP B. MP D. Attack A. Endurance B. Agility C. Intelligence D. Luck C. Talent Axe user. Ah, so you're an axe user. That is a wonderful talent. Dogora was handed a numbered tag indicating that he had passed the appraisal. Dogora's status hasn't changed. In other words, it isn't affected by age, and his talent is wonderful, huh? Next was Cecil's turn. When her results showed up, the examiner exclaimed in appreciation. Name: Cecil Granvelle. HP C. MP A. Attack D. Endurance C. Agility B. Intelligence S. Luck B. Talent Wizard S. This is truly impressive. There are no issues with your talent or stat rankings. Take this to reception. So, this is Cecil's status. Gotta write it down. With Cecil also having passed her appraisal, and Alan writing the details down, it was time for Krena to place her hands on the crystal. Just like when she was 5, the crystal shone with a bright light. Name, Krena. HP, S. MP, C. Attack, S. Endurance, A. Agility, A. Intelligence, C. Luck, B. Talent, Sword Lord.
You're a Sword Lord. Are you perhaps Sword Lord Krena?
Huh? Yeah, that's me. Krena looked surprised that the examiner knew her. In all likelihood, all the examiners had been informed beforehand that Krena would be coming. Naturally, Krena was given a pass and received a numbered tag. This confirms that status rankings aren't affected by level or age. I guess a 3-star class is rare even here. Apparently, on average, around 1 sword lord was born in this country every decade. That was how rare it was. That said, the massive empire to the north had a few dozen sword lords, which meant the number was simply proportional to total population. From what he heard from the Viscount and Magic Tutor, Alan had figured out the general rarity of each star tier. 1-star classes, 1 in 10 people. 2-star classes, 1 in 1,000 people. 3-star classes, 10 people in the kingdom. 5-star classes, the existence of 1 is a miracle. The last to be appraised was Alan. As the examiner was still reeling from the results of Krena's appraisal, Alan stepped forward and placed his hand on the crystal. Light seemed to blast out almost as a physical wave, filling the square in its entirety. The surrounding examiners and examinees all whirled over in surprise and alarm.
Wow!
Cried Alan's examiner as he squinted his eyes, his expectation rising as he tried to catch Alan's reading. Name, Alan. HP, E. MP, E. Attack, E. Endurance, E. Agility, E. Intelligence, E. Luck, E. Class, Summoner.
What is with these results? All your stats are ranked E. You fail.
Looks like my class really does show up properly when I get appraised now. But still, I failed, huh? I had a feeling this would happen when I heard they're doing the appraisal ceremony again just now. I guess that's the end of Volume 3, then.
What? You can't fail, Alan, Cecil protested indignantly.
At the same time, Krena asked,
Why did Alan fail?
Dogora stared fixedly at the readings panel, as if confirming every letter one by one.
Well, looks like I failed, guys. Good luck with your exams. Let's discuss where to meet up after you're done.
Cecil retorted,
Why are you moving on like nothing happened?
I mean, there are still plenty of things I can do even without attending the academy. Honestly, Alan was fine with failing. He had known that all his stats would show up as E, and had already considered the possibility that this might lead to his rejection. He had received a written notice from the Viscount just in case, explaining that the appraisal result from when he was 5 years old was mistaken, and that he did indeed possess a talent, but that letter clearly was not going to be of any help in this situation. Still, this wasn't an entire waste. There's a lot that I can deduce now based on the fact that they fail talented applicants if their stat rankings are low. While in line, Alan had observed the examiners fail almost 1 out of every 3 examinees. It was obvious that just having a talent was not enough to guarantee admittance. From this, Alan figured out 2 things. There is a variation in stat rankings among those with talents, which affects how strong they could ultimately become. It is possible to estimate how strong someone can get based on their stat rankings. The first implied that it was possible that 2 people could possess the same talent, yet have different stat rankings. For example, a swordsman with low attack was possible. The Academy, for its part, wanted talented applicants with statuses actually suited to their talents. Based on the examiner's reaction, Krena, Cecil, and Dogora had all met this requirement. The second meant growth was determined by stat rankings. It was possible to tell how strong someone could become just by looking at their stat rankings and doing the math. The Academy saw no point in accepting and training someone who, even after 3 years of education and training, would prove to be useless on the battlefield. This was likely the real reason why there was no practical element to the entrance exam. Some applicants may have done some leveling, whereas some were still level 1. Whether someone had leveled up or not was a bad standard of judgment, as it did nothing to confirm how useful their talent and stats were. I see. They must have determined whether to pass someone or not based solely on their written exam results and the appraisal from when they were 5. But after those nobles falsified their talents, they now conduct an appraisal on the spot. This way, there's no way for applicants to lie about their talents. Plus, the Academy also manages to weed out those with low stats. 2 birds with 1 stone.
What's all the commotion? You shouldn't make a scene just because you failed.
A blue-haired young man approached them. Based on his flippant aura, he was clearly not an examiner. At his side was a silver-haired elf, who seemed in the prime of his maturity. They had apparently been drawn by the fuss that Krena and Cecil were kicking up.
Oh, it's a real-life elf!
Alan was slightly excited at his first sight of a fantasy race since coming to this world.
Actually...
After the examiner explained the situation, the blue-haired young man said,
Really? Let me take a look at the appraisal results,
and peered over. Cecil closed in on him, demanding,
It makes no sense for Alan to have failed. I need an explanation for this.
What do you mean by, it makes no sense? The man returned.
It means exactly what it means. After all, Alan is strong enough to kill a murder gauche by himself.
As someone who had watched the life-or-death battle between Alan and a murder gauche up close, Cecil absolutely refused to accept this turn of events.
A murder gauche? At his age? Now that is a feat indeed, and yet all his stat rankings are E. It's true that I've never seen an appraisal result like this.
The man turned and shrugged at the elf.
Maybe this really is your guy.
What does that last part mean? The elf's eyebrows rose in surprise.
So, Lord Rosen was right. A young man with all his stat rankings at E really did show up this year.
Did Rosen say anything else, Headmaster? It's hard to make a call based on this alone.
What's going on? What are they talking about? Our Lord is not so proficient at reading the future. In the first place, foresight is not a gift that naturally belongs to spirits. And more importantly, as I've asked time and again, can you stop referring to our object of worship so casually?
Ah, sorry. I'm not good at using lord and lady and all that.
So then, Sir Helmios, can you help confirm the validity of this reading?
Give me a sec. I'll take a look.
The blue-haired man's golden eyes gleamed as he turned toward Alan. Alan and Cecil both recognized the names Helmios and Headmaster. According to their magic tutor, Helmios was the name of the hero who had been born in Giamut. This Helmios had referred to the elf as Headmaster, the title for the person at the very top of Academy City. Helmios's eyes glowed even brighter as he continued staring at Alan. So the hero showed up. What's he doing in a place like this? And when he said he'd take a look, he was talking about me, right?
Let me see. His attack is 570. Whoa! His intelligence is 1,630.
Hold on a damn moment. He totally has an appraisal skill, and he's just exposing my status in front of a whole world. Why does a 5-star hero get an appraisal skill while an 8-star like me doesn't? Oh, the gods are so going to get some prayers for this. Alan practically bit his tongue, trying not to exclaim, Don't read my stats out loud.
Doing so would have confirmed that Helmios really was reading his status.
His intelligence would have to be S to be higher than 1,600, the headmaster said, peering at the plaque displaying Alan's appraisal results. So, why is it E here?
Something's not adding up, Helmios announced. The status isn't enough to defeat a murder gauche.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm. His attack, agility, and endurance are all lower than what a murder gauche would have. He wouldn't last a second. His intelligence is high, sure, and his overall status is close to that of an archwizard, but he doesn't have any magic skills listed.
Okay, seriously, can you stop?
That said, his analysis is correct. He's not the hero for nothing, I suppose.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?